I'm Louis Cole. I've got a YouTube channel, Fun for Louis, and I self-converted this with no experience to electric.
I'm Brett Belan of a company called Solarrolla. We're out of northern Wisconsin, and we build the world's most powerful solar-powered electric vehicles.
Okay, let me start further back than how this van got here. I don't know if you remember, but probably in 2019, I messaged asking about how much it would cost to do one of these.
Really?
Yeah. So somewhere back in our DMs on Instagram.
I remember that.
And there was a few people I spoke to, and obviously because of the amount of work going in, it's expensive.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I wonder whether I've got the capability of doing it. And then I tracked down this guy, Jay, who was in California, wasn't far from where I was living, and he amazingly basically coached me through the whole build. I'd say it's definitely an amateur build compared to what you guys do, as you've probably found out. So that was like 2020, had it in LA for a bit, then end of 2022, did a very ambitious trip across the country. My trip in the electric van, coast to coast, starts right now. I'm just gonna touch the seat. High five! Let's go, Cullen! Let's go! I think we were speaking before I headed off on that because I was like, I want to do it solar powered. That was the dream.
Right, yeah.
I've seen what you guys were doing. I think you'd worked on, I'd seen what Joel's E-Star, and I was like, oh, I could get a big array on the top of the van.
Right.
But we couldn't pull it together in time. I was trying to get sponsorship for panels, and it was just going to be, you know, I do things very last minute, spontaneous. So eventually I was like, I'm just going to try and leave and charge on the go. It's still quite ambitious to try and, I was doing LA to New York. So did most of the trip. It was a complete hilarious adventure. Lots of ups and downs, running out of battery, messaging Brett, trying to figure things out. And then eventually something catastrophic happened. Today, sadly, could be the end of the trip. We're less than 400 miles away, but last night, I think the batteries fully got toasted in the cold weather. Broke down on the side of the road. There was no warning, they just died. And it makes me think something's gone horribly wrong. It's like when that ice storm hit at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Huge cold weather, I was in a blizzard, which could have contributed to whatever eventually broke it, but it was like 1 a.m. in a blizzard, the van just went berserk, shut down. I lost all power and something has screwed a couple of the battery modules. So then we chatted.
Hi, this is Brett.
Hey Brett, it's Louis here.
Hey, Louis.
Hey. Have you got a moment? I just wanted to pick your brain about a problem I've run into. When I hook into my BMS, most of my cells aren't displaying. It's only reading something like 41 volts and it should be 170 volts. The problem with the BMS, we didn't actually set it up with all of the relays, so it was just giving me a readout. It doesn't actually intervene. I couldn't really do much, troubleshooting or problem solving myself.
The more information that you can find out, like the more components that you could look at, that would paint us a picture of what's going on.
Oh, okay.
We need clues.
Yeah, why don't I go through all of the different things I know and almost kind of, to help paint that picture. I'll put the puzzle pieces together. So you talked me through, we were trying to figure out, I had the computer linked into the BMS, but there was a whole wad of cells that were missing.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even read the readouts.
Showed space TH.
TH. And then eventually, and this was really my only option, was to get it towed here. And that's when it arrived, end of December 2022, having a couple of modules had fried. And then you guys did your magic, worked your magic.
Yeah, it showed up. It was full on snow and cold here. And yeah, I couldn't imagine with no heater, basically, what you had done.
It was
wanted to support that, kind of a journey and biting off that much. That's what we have to do to really advance. So I appreciate that about you. And that's kind of what we do. We push and we go that extra mile. So we got the van, and going through it, it looked like, okay, there was a little bit of a short across one of the...
Well, what had you first thought when we first spoke? before you got the van, you weren't entirely sure it was the batteries,
I
right?
wasn't entirely sure because you had a BMS on there, but turns out the BMS wasn't actually doing much, but just kind of reading cells.
Yeah.
Because usually the BMS will keep anything from happening and shut it down if it does. But it looked like it could have been possibly just in the BMS itself that it wasn't reading these cells. But turns out it wasn't reading those cells because they had cooked.
Louis' red VW bus. Okay, so Louis had a little problem with his batteries, and we are going to need to possibly replace a module, maybe two, we don't know yet. We have to drop part of the battery pack, take it out, and see what's going on. So come with us and we'll take a little look at what we're going to do. So Louis has 12 Tesla Model S modules here. So there's 2 on the sides, there is 4 in the front, and then there is 6 back here. So we think that we can take this section out here, remove a couple of the high voltage leads, the BMS wires, and 2 of the cooling fittings. So we pull that, we drop this portion, we get it out there where we can take a look at it and replace 1, potentially 2 of the modules.
Definitely the problem area is in here where we're seeing some different black marks from arcing, and it looks like potentially the series connection arced just from a small spot in the back to that crossbar in there, to that rail support, and caused a short between that and potentially some of the JB weld used to connect the battery up in place of the old rail. So yeah, just kind of trying to sleuth it out and move forward and get Louis back on the road with his bus. So we'll need to talk to Louis a little bit of how he did his parallel connections so that we can pull these 2 problem batteries out. Yeah. So we determined that it was these cells in particular. We pulled them out. Indeed, they were cooked.
I love how it's just a casual, yeah, we pulled them out. Just to say, I had the battery boxes, I didn't know what I was doing. They were incredibly hard to get to. The whole thing was all bolted together underneath, so it wasn't as simple as probably pulling out other batteries.
No, it wasn't simple. It wasn't simple. It was like a lot of work that I hadn't done, so I didn't really know what I was getting into. A bit of playing doctor here and there.
Yeah. And watching back my original build videos when I was in Jehu's workshop to
trying to figure out
what the heck did Louis do?
So I got to know Louis a lot from the work there, and anybody that's cutting aluminum on a table saw has my vote. So you did good. I mean, you guys got it. It made it happen. And
it wasn't even a table saw. It was a handheld circular saw screwed onto a board that we basically made a homemade table saw. That was so dangerous. But yeah, you fixed it.
Yeah, so we got it all back together. All right, we got the connectors from EV West plug into our Model S modules. So these are the 2 new modules for Louis' bus. We just got the first Model S module that we're replacing for Louis in and drilled out. We had to drill some holes to match his original batteries. I just need a super long Phillips to get down there and tighten them up. And then the next one goes in. Well, what happened also is some of the wires had pulled off, the little fuse wires had pulled off the main bus there on some adjacent cells. I noticed that one of the existing modules, it seems that this metal somehow, whether this module was dropped or something, I'm not sure, but there's 8 cells that have their small fuse wire kind of pulled out. So you can see the striations on the metal, and then these here cells has kind of come up a little bit. Now these didn't short or anything. It could be from just using a driver and it bunched up. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but
there is 70, I think there's 74 in parallel in this brick here. So we'd be losing 8, so that'd be what, about 1/9 or so. A relatively significant amount of power going to be lost.
After a lot of research, I was able to come up with some silver solder kind of resin, and I used that, and it put those wires back on really solidly, and they have been just fine. So that seems to be a good solution there for that happening.
We'll get that silver epoxy and get those fused wires back down on there and keep those cells in the mix. And then we button this back up. I'm pretty stoked to get this back in the vehicle and get that vehicle back on the road.
I'm just about to put the plates back on under here. So I've been under here cleaning up all the old silicone, got all of that off, and making sure that all the wires and cooling lines are up and tied up and out of the way. So next step is to get some silicone and seal this up really well before we put the plates on.
Getting the thing all back together, you know, thankfully I have a lift here at this shop. I've never had one before, but thankfully I have one here because it was all underneath there.
It would have been impossible without it.
Would have been impossible. So getting it back together, and the first ride, Tony and I took it for a cruise, and yeah, a couple cells just tanked, and I was like, oh man, this is not going to be good. There's other damage. But you know, in this last week, we've charged and discharged, and everything has balanced out. Everything's happy. There's nothing that's dropping dangerously low. They're all staying pretty consistent.
And
so,
you've dialed in the motor controller to like give us some protection.
So, yeah, exactly. So we keep the regen low at higher voltages, so we don't drive the cells high, and then of course just cut back power at lower voltages so that we don't really push those cells hard there.
So we're setting the low voltage buzzer alarm.
So here's when our battery voltage starts getting high.
Yeah.
It starts to cut back regen. So it's like at 150 volts, we start cutting back your power. And then at 145, you only got 20% of power so that you cannot over discharge your batteries.
Okay. So it means I can't run full speed up to until they're dead,
Right.
which is what was happening the whole trip.
Yeah.
Because I guess I didn't have any of this.
And
I'm hugely relieved because when I first arrived, you were like, yeah, we did a range test. It's like 40 something miles.
Yeah, we did like 50 miles.
I was like, what? I was like, oh no, because I knew I was getting 150. But then, was it last night or the night before? I can't remember. We got the furthest range I've ever got.
161 or something.
And we probably had a tiny bit more in there.
Yeah, and the van had been sitting for a while too, so definitely the DC-DC converter pulled some power out just to keep the 12-volt accessories
I think we
going.
could have pushed it to 170, 180 if we'd done it.
I think so. And of course, you know, we are driving this thing pretty easy. It is a 73. Oh, same year as my bus.
Yeah.
But we take it pretty easy, you know, 45, 50 miles an hour feels just fine in one of these. And that, of course, you know, as a result of it not being incredibly aerodynamic, is really efficient way to drive it.
It feels so good to be back in the van.
Yeah, I know. If I can go jump in my van, especially with that solar power coming down, it feels so good. The van seems to run pretty good. Huh?
Yeah, it's running good. 168.
And then today we hooked up the solar, which was the original dream, and maybe I do another build at some point that's fully solar. But yeah, we got 50 miles.
We pulled 50 miles of range today. So it's been hard with Louis' van because, as you can see, the top, it doesn't really lend itself to solar.
It like kind of tapers in.
I hate to like start punching holes in it and hanging stuff off there. So it probably would be best to do maybe a different top, or
if I was keeping it, I think I'd try and sort out Red Food's old top if you weren't going to use it for something else.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Just cut this.
That's
This
the
is just
ideal top.
screwed on anyway, right? This
Right.
is fiberglass. You just pull it straight off.
Yeah. But there's also, it gave us a chance to experiment with like just using satellite panels. So we have a bunch of light leaf panels for our next E-Star build that we were able to just kind of, you know, they're really super light and put out good power. We just leaned them up against there.
And they would fit perfectly if we were to like stack them inside.
Which is why we chose them. You can slide them right inside. They're super light. They're easy to deal with.
Nice. And how many of these do you have?
I have a lot. I have like 8 of them.
We're just testing out whether we can fit a few of these in the back of the Volkswagen. Oh yeah, it's perfect.
Oh, look at that.
That makes me wonder, like, it's kind of the perfect size to have
You
as...
put it up high.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like made for it. Look at
We leaned them up against the van today and pulled 50 miles of range. And we definitely are in a little bit of a hole here, a little bit of a cavern. So the sun is still shining brightly, but it's not hitting my panels. So had we really gotten the exposure, if we'd have done what we did today, you know, end of September, in a, say, open field, we would have pulled 100 miles, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a whole nother 8 hours, 4 hours on each end, pretty much.
Yeah, we've done it like end of June or July or something.
Right.
Take a look at the spreadsheet. So this is Tony's awesome nerdery. We love having Tony around. He gets it down to the numbers, no BS, gets it on a graph, took readings all day, and can really show you exactly what happened there. And it looks like he's got an energy stored in kilowatt hours of about 14.5. So 14,500 watt hours was what we were able to pick up on this fall day here in northern Wisconsin, which equates to about 50 miles of range. So considering about 300 watt hours per mile, let me grab my trusty calculator. So at 14.5, divide that by 300, that's 48 miles, a little over 48 miles of range. So look to see about 75 if you get your maximum power point right, and if you get a little bit better exposure. And that's just in the wintertime pretty amazing.
So it's all right there. It's really here. You know, it's really here to be able to chillax, solar power your ride.
I love it. I love it. Super inspired.
If you're new to our channel, check out our other solar electric build videos and adventures. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on all social media platforms, and join our Patreon community.